Welcome, Chief Anderson.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Today is 6:30 already, and it's our Monday, July 27th, 2020 City Council regular meeting. And this is our city's ninth council meeting held via online conferencing application. All city council members and city staff are participating from remote locations. Please allow one person to speak at a time. I will call on every member to make sure you have had an opportunity to speak, and votes will be taken by roll call vote. I will now ask our city clerk, Renteria, to start the roll call.
Okay, Mayor Guerrero.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Stremler.
Here.
Councillor Farmer.
Here.
Councillor Henry. He is here. Maybe he's just muted. Let me check on him.
Here.
Perfect. Thank you. Councillor Restucci.
Here, Jackie, thank you.
Councillor Hicks.
Here.
Councillor Boersma.
I'm here. Sorry, I couldn't get the time mute.
Perfect. Got you. Okay. City Manager Casey.
Here.
City Clerk Renteria. I am here. Finance Director Alba.
Here.
Fire Chief Anderson. And I know he's here too. Let me unmute him. Fire Chief, are you there?
Hello, I'm here.
Perfect.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'll let you mute yourself again. Police Chief Escalera. And I know he's here too. I'll go ahead and unmute him. Chief Escalera, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Perfect. I'll go ahead and let you mute yourself. And then Public Works Director Fisher. And he's here too. I'll unmute him. Public Works Director Fisher, are you there?
I'm here. I'm here.
Perfect. Okay. So I'll go ahead and let you guys mute and unmute yourselves. And everybody's here.
Thank you, Jackie.
You're welcome.
Up next, we have our public comment section. Mr. City Manager, did we get any public comments?
We did not receive any written public comments in advance of tonight's meeting.
Thank you. Up next, we have our consent agenda, which consists of the approval of the minutes for the June 22nd, 2020 regular meeting, minutes for the July 2nd, 2020 workshop. We have approved payroll vouchers numbers 118779 through 118787, and wires transfers as listed for $388,588.00 for the period ended on July 10th, 2020. Approved claim vouchers, which are the vouchers numbers 99471 through 99529, and wire transfers as listed for $122,865.16 for the period ended on July 15th, 2020. Also voucher numbers 99,530 through 99,575, and wire transfers are listed for $144,212.61 for the period ended on July 22nd, 2020. I will now ask each council member if they have any questions or comments on the consent agenda. Councilor Farmer.
None.
Councilor Restucci.
No questions, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Broersma.
I have no questions.
Councilor Hicks.
No questions.
Deputy Mayor Stremler.
No questions.
Councilor Henry.
No questions, sir, no.
And no questions from me either. So since there's no questions or comments on the consent agenda, what is the desire of council?
I would move to approve. This is John Henry.
Jim Restucci, I'll second.
Thank you. So I have a motion by Councilmember Henry, second by Councilmember Restucci to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any debate on this item? Hearing no debate, the city clerk will now start the roll call vote, please.
Counselor Farmer,
Yes.
Counselor Restucci,
Yes.
Counselor Broersma,
Yes.
Counselor Hicks,
Yes.
Mayor Guerrero,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Stremler,
Yes.
Counselor Henry,
Yay.
7 yes votes. Motion passes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Up next, we have our active agenda, and we have a presentation. I'm not sure if they were able to join us, but we have a guest, Monica Romero from Nuestra Casa, to share some information on what their team did in May to bring awareness to wildfires. Jackie, do we know if she was able to join us?
I don't see a Monica, but I do see one guest, but she's labeled as Debbie, and I'm not sure if she's from Nuestra Casa, but I don't see anybody else.
Okay, so unless Debbie is going to be a representative for Nuestra Casa, at this point, she's not here. We'll just move on. If she joins a little bit later, we might be able to hear what they did here in the Sunnyside area as far as awareness to wildfires. Up next in our active agenda is emergency resolution for COVID-19 pandemic response extension. Consider approving a resolution extending the proclamation of emergency and adopting findings of facts and procedures for managing the COVID-19 public health emergency. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As of this evening, Yakima County is reporting 10,195 cases and 191 deaths from COVID-19. The state has reported more than 52,000 cases statewide. Last week, in response to the concerns about the effects of social gatherings on rising transmission rates statewide, the governor extended and expanded the statewide restrictions on indoor gatherings, and the health secretary expanded the statewide mandatory mask order to cover all indoor common spaces as well as anywhere outdoors, anytime you can't maintain at least 6 feet of physical separation. I do plan to provide council with some further updates on the pandemic later tonight during the city manager's report, but for purposes of this item, just wanted to set that stage and then note that as a result of the ongoing pandemic emergency, we are requesting an extension of the city's existing pandemic declaration and the related administrative and operational adjustments we've had to make as a result. As with the previous declaration, we're aligning these steps with the state and county's public health orders so that we can adjust smoothly as their directives change, as the circumstances change. With that, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Casey. We will now ask each council member if they have questions or comments on this agenda item. And we'll start with Deputy Mayor Stremler.
Yeah, I'm having a terrible time understanding the city manager. It sounds like he's talking in a tin can or something. I caught very little of what he said. I'm assuming this is what Governor Inslee spoke about last week. Is that what this is?
So this is going to be an extension, Mr. Deputy Mayor, of our, so we can have our meetings basically virtually versus at a City Hall. Mr. Casey, maybe the speaker might be a little bit too far, or because it does sound a little muffled from what I gathered as well.
I'm using the computer speakers this evening because I'm on video rather than the telephone dial-in. And
That did sound a little
further away.
better.
Okay.
That did sound better, so maybe just speaking up a little bit might be helpful. Did you
Okay.
hear that a little better, Deputy Mayor Stremler?
Try it one more time. Have him say a few words.
Let's see. As of this evening, Yakima County has reported 10,195 cases of COVID-19.
Okay, that's a little bit better. Still sound like you're talking into a tin can, but I can hear the words better this time.
Okay.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Stremler, so we want to see if you have any questions or comments regarding the emergency resolution for COVID-19 pandemic response extension.
None at this time.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Councilor Henry.
No questions.
Councilor Restucci.
No questions, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Hicks.
No questions.
Councilor Farmer.
No questions.
Councilor Broersma.
I just want to clarify, this is just an extension of the existing proclamation that we've had for the last few months, correct?
Yes, that's correct. This is essentially the same proclamation that you enacted at the end of May. The only adjustment to it is the county was authorized to go into this modified phase 1. So we've adapted a little of the language to insert that midpoint step into the language. Otherwise, the core provisions remain the same.
Thank you.
Okay, and I don't have any questions myself. So what is the desire of council on this agenda item?
I'd move to approve. This is Councilor Henry.
I'll second. Councilor Hicks.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Councilor Henry, second by Councilor Hicks to approve a resolution extending the proclamation of emergency and adopting findings of facts and procedures for managing the COVID-19 public health emergency. Is there any debate on this item? Okay, here no debate. The city clerk will now start the roll call vote.
Deputy Mayor Stremler,
Yes.
Councilor Henry,
Yay.
Councilor Restucci,
Yes.
Councilor Hicks,
Yes.
Councilor Farmer,
Yes.
Mayor Guerrero,
Yes.
Councilor Broersma.
Yes.
7 yes votes, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Our next agenda item is our 2020 budget amendment number 2. Consider adopting an ordinance amending the 2020 budget. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Given the audio difficulty, what I'll do is just briefly introduce this topic. This is a follow-on to the budget presentation that council received at its workshop or meeting a couple weeks ago. I'll turn this over to the finance director to give you the highlights. And with council's permission, I'm going to try to log back out and log back in using my telephone for audio. So I'll be stepping away briefly and then rejoining the meeting by phone so that hopefully the sound is a little clearer.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is Elizabeth, and I have brought forward a budget amendment that really just does a few things for our city by putting things back into a place where their alignment has gone wrong, or we've done something that we had in a budget that we didn't realize was there. So one of them that I want to highlight is the general fund. There is a beginning fund balance decrease, and that's unusual since we took care of all of our beginning fund balances in budget amendment number 1. But while doing the annual report, I go through and do a comprehensive review of 2019 finances. And we discovered that the payments for the general fund to the sewer fund for the interfund loan were actually being paid back into the general fund and not being put into the sewer fund. So that correction was lowering the beginning balance of the general fund and then increasing the beginning balance of the sewer fund because those transactions were in 2019. So really it's a technical adjustment, but it is good that we catch it before we're audited, and it's nice to know that the review process does work. We did not increase any adjustments on the expenditure side for the general fund. And then other things, we have had just small revenue increases. You'll see REIT and REIT 1 and REIT 2 had 12,500 revenue increase. And I think that's due to property sales being very strong in the first and second quarters. The water, sewer, and garbage funds all show B&O taxes. And so basically what that is a change just in an accounting procedure. So in the past, the B&O taxes were just put directly into the general fund. And at the recommendation of the auditor, the revenues actually need to be put into the fund that they should be coming from, and then that be an expenditure of that fund and a revenue to the general fund. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but those B&O taxes are actually taxes charged by the utility. So the water utility is charging those taxes and then paying them to the general fund. And that's the proper accounting way to do for it. And then everything else really was just technical things that we came across in doing our review. Our budget is, almost 200 pages long and with a lot of line items. And so there was just a few things that we had to do to make adjustments. And I can answer any questions if anyone has something on a specific item or a specific fund.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And we'll go down the list of our council speaking chart, and we'll see if we have questions or comments on this budget amendment number 2. We'll start with Councilor Henry.
No questions, just a comment of, yes, I'm glad the review process works, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilor Broersma.
So as I look at this, I don't see anything that's out of order. It's just a reallotment and a realignment of some of the expenses with the deposits and beginning balances. So I'm pleased with what I see. Well done.
Thank you. Councilor Restucci.
No questions, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Hicks.
No questions. Happy you caught it before the auditors.
Councilor Farmer.
No questions.
Deputy Mayor Stremler.
No questions.
Okay, thank you. And I don't have any questions. I did review it, and it obviously makes sense. Actually, Elizabeth, there's one in there that said about something about CARES. Is that like an expenditure we're trying to charge to that the CARES funding that we are looking at potentially getting or got?
We actually increased our revenues by the CARES grant. We have expectations that we should get most of that money. So the revenues are there. The expenditures are there as well, but they're coded to a job. So as soon as I have all of my Excel worksheets done, then I'll be submitting for those reimbursements. So that is the one that you actually passed. It was the CDBG. And I want to say that it was passed on May 27th, if that sounds right. I know we passed it last month.
Okay, so we're just planning for potentially getting those funds in and allocating those to the different expenses, sounds like.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for answering that question. Okay, hearing no additional questions, what is the desire of council on this item?
I'd move to approve. This is Councilor Henry.
Second, Deputy Mayor Stremler.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Henry, second by Deputy Mayor Stremler to adopt an ordinance amending the 2020 budget. Is there any debate on this item? Okay, hearing no debate, the city clerk will now start the roll call vote, please.
Counselor Henry,
Yay.
Mayor Guerrero,
Yes?
Counselor Broersma,
Yes.
Counselor Restucci,
Yes.
Counselor Hicks, Counselor Hicks,
Yes.
Counselor Farmer,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Stremler.
Yes.
Okay, you have 7 yes votes. Motion passes.
Thank you. Up next, we have our Purdue Pharma Proof of Claim Authorization. Provide direction about filing a proof of claim before the bar date in the Purdue Pharma bankruptcy case. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is the sound better for council members from the phone?
Yes, it's a lot more clear.
Sounds a
Excellent.
lot
All right.
better.
Thank you for your patience. This item is, I would characterize it as one in which it speaks to a possibility of future funding to the city. Council members in the community are well aware of the impacts of the opioid epidemic that took place beginning at the start of the 2000s. It caused major impacts to healthcare and public services, and quite a few local governments have participated in litigation over with the pharmaceutical companies over their roles in the pandemic. We recently received a notice from one of the groups of attorneys that are representing a committee of government and other litigants that are working on the Purdue Pharma litigation. Purdue Pharma has entered bankruptcy, and so this is now being governed by the bankruptcy court process. And the notice we received advised us that we have a limited time frame in which to file a proof of claim to assert our standing in this litigation against Purdue Pharma and for any potential settlement. We sent the information on to the city attorney's office, which reviewed the notice. They do recommend proceeding with the proof of claim if the city wishes to be eligible for any potential award. They did note in reviewing the materials, which are extensive, that these are not yet settled amounts. Any actual award may be considerably less than the estimates that were provided by the attorneys in the litigation. And that the bankruptcy court in its proceedings has expressed a preference to fund things like abatement programs rather than just giving cash grants back out to the cities, but it has not yet issued any final rulings. We don't have information in terms of the eventual timeline of the litigation. As I think council is well aware, bankruptcy proceedings can take quite some time, and this litigation has been underway for a number of years already. So we're not expecting anything soon, but we did want to bring this to council for consideration given the deadline for filing a proof of claim. With that, I or the finance director would be happy to try to answer any questions.
Thank you. And we'll start with our Councilor Restucci. Any questions or comments on this item?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, no questions.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Strumler.
No questions.
Councilor Farmer.
No questions.
Councilor Henry.
No questions.
Councilor Broersma.
No questions.
Councilor Hicks.
No questions.
And I don't have any questions either. Hopefully we do get something to help, from Purdue Pharma, but obviously, who knows? At this point, anything will be helpful in getting some help for people who've been affected by this. At this case, Mr. City Manager, do you need, I don't see a motion on here do you just gonna get a nod from us that we do want you to pursue this?
Yeah, sorry, the recommendation should have been framed as move to authorize the city manager to execute and file the.
So council members, do we have a motion to allow the city manager to move forward and provide a proof of claim before the bar date to Purdue Pharma bankruptcy case?
Motion to approve.
I'll second the motion. This is Councilor Henry.
Okay,
I think that was Chairman.
motion by Deputy Mayor Stremler, second by Councilmember Henry to allow city manager to file approval claim before the bar date in the Purdue Pharma bankruptcy case. All those in favor, any debate on this item? Hearing no debate, the city clerk will now start our roll call vote.
Councilor Restucci,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Stremler,
Yes.
Councilor Farmer,
Yes.
Councilor Henry,
Yay.
Councilor Broersma,
Yes.
Councilor Hicks,
Yes.
Mayor Guerrero.
Yes.
Okay, 7 yes votes, motion passes.
All right, Mr. City Manager, so we'll want you to file that claim, please.
Thank you.
Up next, we have our David Boss and David Boss and Fred Rodriguez property annexation. Consider adopting an ordinance to complete the annexation process for parcel numbers 22-1023-44401, parcel number 22-1023-44400, parcel number 22-1023-43401, 22-1023-43400, and parcel number 22-1023-44013, located on the north side of Outlook Road. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. It's actually my pleasure with this item tonight to, if I may, just take a moment to introduce to his first participation in council meeting, our new planning supervisor, Mike Shuttleworth. As council is aware, Mr. Shuttleworth joined us on June 1st as planning supervisor, coming to us after a distinguished career both with Benton County and with the Yakima Valley Conference of Governments. And so this is one of two items that he has on your agenda this evening, helping to just bring the finishing touches to a couple of land use transactions that the city had begun in the last couple of years. This one involves an annexation of several parcels, as was described, just kind of on the north edge of town. And they've been through all the preliminary steps, Planning Commission, City Council previously, and now the Boundary Review Board, and is ready for the council's final approval. And if council has any questions, either I or Mike are here on the phone to answer your questions. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll start with Councilor Broersma. Questions or comments on this item?
No questions, sir.
Councilor Henry?
No questions.
Councilor Restucci?
No questions, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Hicks?
No questions.
Deputy Mayor Stremler?
No questions.
Councilor Farmer?
Just a comment. I was on the planning commission when it was brought before us, and it was a good project, and I would be totally in favor of it.
Thank you. I do have one question. The other day, a developer asked me how long it would take for something like this to go through the process. I told them about a year, and I guess maybe I should have asked before. I did direct them to your office, Mr. City Manager, but I'm not sure if they ever showed up. But if we were to be asked again, what is the approximate process? I remember it was quite lengthy, but from your recollection, how long did it take from start to finish?
Well, that is one of the things that Mr. Shuttleworth is going to be taking a look at as he evaluates the operations of the office. There are certain parts of this process that are driven by statutory timeframes, where different comment periods have to be allowed for and so forth. I mentioned a moment ago, it comes to the City Council initially, it then goes to the Planning Commission, goes back to City Council, goes to the Boundary Review Board, and then finally back to City Council for final approval. Mr. Shuttleworth, would you care to you're certainly far more familiar with those steps and the typical timeframes they take than I am. Do you have anything to add?
Normally those annexation, the ones I've worked on at other jurisdictions, are usually between 4 and 5 months, depends on the complications with, their zoning and all of those items. But usually you can probably get them done in 4 months.
So it sounds like best case scenario, we're looking at under half a year. And in this one, it looks like it started back in May of 2019. So some could take a little bit longer, it sounds like. Is that correct? Or March 2019. So it sounds like it just varies depending on what the details are. Is that correct, Mr. Shutterworth?
That's correct.
Okay. So yeah, I told him about a year since my experience in planning. I know it was quite lengthy process sometimes depending on the parcels and the different moving parts. So if he hasn't showed up, I'll probably reach out to him again and see if he might be more inclined to try to do something. And since there could be as little as 4 months or obviously a little bit longer than that. So I'll definitely have him go to City Hall and get some more information if need be.
I did talk to one gentleman last week out by the park.
He was looking into developing a property north of town.
Okay, I have not talked to him then.
Okay, so I'll probably have him reach out to your office and give hopefully some insight into how the process works versus just my recollection. And I want to say thank you to the Sunnyside team, Mr. Shutterworth, and looking forward to good things happening.
Thank you.
Okay, so what is the desire of council on this item?
Mr. Mayor,
I move to approve. This is John Henry.
Actually, John, I was speaking. If you, okay, I'll take this.
Okay, that's fine.
Yep. Mr. Mayor, I would approve to consider adopting an ordinance to complete the annexation process for parcels 221023-44401, 221023-4400, 221-023-43401, 221-023-43400, and 221-023-44013 located at the north side of Outlook Road.
Thank you for that motion. Do we have a second?
I will second.
I'll
that,
go ahead
Mr.
and
Mayor.
second.
Okay, I think I heard Mr. Brosma second that first, so we'll go that route. So motion by Councilmember Restucci, second by Councilmember Brosma to adopt an ordinance to complete the annexation process for the parcels as listed by Councilmember Restucci, located on the north side of Outlook Road. Is there any debate on this item? Hearing no debate, the city clerk will now start the roll call vote.
Counselor Broersma,
Yes.
Counselor Henry,
Yay.
Counselor Restucci,
Yes.
Counselor Hicks,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Stremler,
Yes.
Mayor Guerrero,
Yes.
Counselor Farmer.
Yes.
7 yes votes, motion passes.
Thank you. Up next, we have our New Life Home Final Plat. Consider approving a resolution approving the New Life Home Final Plat and authorizing the mayor to sign the final plat. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the second of the items that Mike Shuttleworth has brought forward. Again, this is an item that has gone through the preliminary steps. This is a final approval. Planning Commission has considered it and recommended it. Council considered the preliminary plat recommendation. This would enable almost 11-acre parcel to be subdivided into roughly 60 individual family residential lots. These would be taxable lots, which I know has been a point of interest for council on some other past developments. Everything has been reviewed and is essentially in order, and so we're ready to bring the final plat and resolution for council's final consideration. I know Mike has met a little bit with the developers on this one, so happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. And we'll go down the list and see if there's any questions or comments on this agenda item. We'll start with Councilor Farmer.
Yeah, just a couple of observations here. I again was on the Planning Commission when this was brought before us, and it was a good project. The homes are taxable. They are affordable homes for people to move into. The concern that the Planning Commission had at that time, and that has really nothing to do with this, is we don't have any way of charging any kind of impact fees. I'm a little concerned about the impact that this housing development is going to have on the road. Something that we need to consider in the future, but it's a good project and I would vote for it.
Thank you. Councillor Hicks,
No questions.
Councillor Restucci,
No questions, but a comment on Mr. Farmer's comment. I too am concerned about this, Mike, so I'm wondering what we do moving forward.
okay. Councillor Henry,
No comment. No question.
Councillor Broersma.
Just echoing my colleagues' concerns about the road and increased traffic, but otherwise it's a good project and I think it should move forward.
Deputy Mayor Stremler.
Just a comment. I brought this up when this first came to the council, this and the mobile home park on Edison Avenue about impact fees. That's been quite a while back. I know nothing's been done to address it, so I think it is something we need to start taking a look at. That's really all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know we talked about impact fees and the traffic that was going to be coming in and out of the area. And from what I remember, they had already taken that into account regarding the hotel and the businesses down the street. So that would definitely be something to try to take a look at down the road for future development. One other thing that got brought up at one of those meetings was also having some green space for children to play. And I do recall in this, there was supposed to be a parcel that was going to be developed for park use or green space, and then donated back to the city at one point in the future once I would imagine the development is done. But out of curiosity, Mr. Shuttleworth, have you noticed other cities that you worked with that do developments like these and they require specific percentage of land or specific amount of space for children or green space? Are you aware of any of that?
I'm not aware of any like in Yakima County except for the city of Yakima. I know like city of West Richland and some other cities down the Tri-Cities do require park fees as part of their development. And this proposed development, as you can see on the screen, it has a tract A, and that tract A is being dedicated as a park to the city. But impact fees is something we can look at and start developing some scenarios for those, because the state law does allow us to adopt those as long as we can show what the impacts are that we're trying to mitigate through those.
Okay, thank you. That might be something for the future city manager. We could put in an agenda item to discuss it and see what council wants to do moving forward.
Absolutely. No, we'll begin taking a look at that and bring that forward as a discussion item, provide some background on the relevant statutes so that council has that guidance.
Thank you. Okay, having questions answered and comments said, what is the desire of council on this item?
Motion to approve, Deputy Mayor Strumler.
I'll second, Councilor Hicks.
Okay, we got a motion by Deputy Mayor Stremler, second by Councilor Hicks to approve a resolution approving the New Life Homes final plat and authorizing the mayor to sign the final plat. Is there any debate on this item? Okay, hearing no debate, the city clerk will now start the roll call vote.
Counselor Farmer,
Yes.
Counselor Hicks,
Yes.
Counselor Restucci,
Yes.
Counselor Henry.
Yep.
Counselor Broersma,
Yes.
Mayor Guerrero,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Stremler.
Yes.
Okay, 7 yes votes, motion passes.
Thank you. Up next, we have our wastewater treatment plant blower purchase. Consider approving a resolution accepting the bid from Treatment Equipment Company and authorize the city manager to purchase a new hybrid blower in the amount of $89,685. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now we're shifting to the Public Works section of the agenda. This is next step in a process that council has been engaged in for just over a year now. We had submitted a proposal to Pacific Power in 2019 to find energy savings at our wastewater treatment plant. Earlier this year, council approved both that contract and then the first of the contracts to actually perform the work with the electrical and demolition and installation of the equipment that will be required. This final step is actually purchasing the new blower unit. It was sent out to bids by Public Works here about a month ago, and we got 2 bids back, the low bid coming in just under $90,000, which we're very pleased to report will still bring the overall project in about $20,000 under the approved budget and on schedule. And with that, I or Public Works Director Shane Fisher can answer any questions from council.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. We'll start the question and comment section with our Councilor Henry.
No questions.
Deputy Mayor Stremler,
No questions.
Councilor Farmer,
No questions.
Councilor Broersma,
No questions, sir.
Councilor Hicks,
No questions.
Councilor Restucci.
No questions, Mr. Mayor.
And I don't have any questions either. Looking at the bids, it sounds like we got a good offer on this one. I'm happy that we found somebody who's willing to do the work for a reasonable amount of price. So thank you for that. What is the desire of council on this item?
Move to approve.
I'd move to.
So Henry, was that you that made the motion?
Hicks.
Yeah, Stremler and I both did at the same time. He can have it, and I'll go ahead and second the motion.
Okay, so who moved the motion then? Was it
This is Stremler.
Stremler? Okay. So motion by Stremler, second by Henry. Okay. So motion by Deputy Mayor Stremler, second by Councilmember Henry to approve a resolution accepting the bid from Treatment Equipment Company and authorize the city manager to purchase a new hybrid blower in the amount of $89,685. Is there any debate on this item? Hearing no debate, the city clerk will now start the roll call vote.
Mayor Guerrero,
Yes.
Councilor Henry,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Stremler,
Yes.
Councilor Farmer,
Yes.
Councilor Broersma,
Yes.
Councilor Hicks,
Yes.
Councilor Restucci.
Yes.
7 yes votes, motion passes.
Thank you. Up next, we have our sewer pipelining contract. Consider approving a resolution accepting the bid from Columbia Pumping and Construction, Inc. for sewer pipelining in the amount of $69,110 and authorize the city manager to sign and execute the contract with Columbia Pumping and Construction Incorporated, or Inc. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is kind of an interesting innovation or development in the ability to do underground sewer repairs and infrastructure repairs, really quite intriguing. As the council is aware, much of the city's underground sewer infrastructure was installed decades ago, if not several decades. And some of that infrastructure has now been built over. We have development in place, streets, parking lots, buildings. And as that infrastructure ages and needs repair or replacement, it can be quite disruptive and costly to try to get at that. This approach involves relining an existing sewer line basically in place. And it does so for much less cost and a lot less disruption to the surrounding businesses and surface infrastructure that may be in place. So we've identified a couple of areas of important sewer infrastructure that are at risk of failure that we want to get repaired. These repairs will enable these sections of the sewer system to function for many more years for us. And be happy to invite the Public Works Director if there's any observations about, I believe the city's had some past experience in using this technique, and anything you'd like to add about the description for council.
No, nothing to add to that, but you are correct. We've done this several times. Each year we try to identify certain areas that seem to be problematic. And how we determine that is we put the camera in the sewer line and basically walk the camera through and identify areas where we've got water coming through the joints. But the pipe is still in good condition. It hasn't collapsed or there's no sags. As long as the pipe is the integrity is still there, then it's a candidate for slip lining, for pipe lining. So we do it each year. We budget about $150,000 for at least the last 3 or 4 years, and yeah, they're great. There's hardly any disruption to the users. We do have to plug the line temporarily to get the slip line through there. And then once we open everybody's service lines back up, then they're able to use their facilities again. So this is a great method, and we love it. So with that, I can answer any other questions.
Thank you. And we'll start with our Councilor Hicks for questions or comments on this item.
No questions.
Okay. Councilor Bergsma?
This sounds like a project that is very similar to what we've done in other places. It's worked quite well, so I think it's a great idea.
Councilor Henry?
No questions.
Deputy Mayor Stremler?
No question.
Councilor Restucci?
No questions, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Farmer?
No questions.
I do have a question, Mr. City Manager or Shane, I'm not sure. One of the problems you said that we see water seeping into the line, so that obviously that would be sent over to our sewer treatment plant. So this sounds like it would have an effect also on how much water we're treating at the plant, but also it sounds like it's water seeping into the pipes. Do we know that if this has anything to do with what we're working with SVAD? As far as the cross connection of the lines that they're having some fecal matter in them?
It does. And it kind of, yeah, it goes hand in hand. It solves several issues, but that is one of them definitely that the last couple of years, a couple lines that we've relined definitely were with the intention of trying to find out where the fecal's coming from. If it's coming in from the outside the pipe, and into their drain line, which actually runs deeper than our sewer line. So we reline these pipes just to ensure that we have a tight system, and then basically that eliminates that sewer line from any kind of being considered for possibly having a fecal issue that they're picking up in their drain line. So by relining these, it solves that issue. It kind of mitigates that section of town that we may be seeing some fecal coliform.
Okay, thank you. Okay, what is the desire of council on this item?
Move to approve. This is Councilor Henry.
I'll second. Councilor Hicks.
Okay, motion by Councilor Henry, seconded by Councilor Hicks to approve a resolution accepting the bid from Columbia Pumping and Construction, Inc. for sewer pipelining in the amount of $69,110 and authorize the city manager to sign and execute the contract with Columbia Pumping and Construction, Inc. Any debate on this item? Hearing no debate, the city clerk will now start the roll call vote.
Councillor Hicks,
Aye.
Councillor Boersma,
Yes.
Councillor Henry,
Yay.
Mayor Guerrero,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Stremler,
Yes.
Councillor Restucci,
Yes.
Councillor Farmer.
Yes.
Okay, 7 yes votes, motion passes.
Thank you. Up next, we have our consideration of a resolution expressing support for ballot proposition 1 concerning sales and use tax levy for transportation improvement program. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As council is aware, state law authorizes cities to create local transportation benefit districts to collect revenue to help pay for transportation infrastructure projects. In March of 2019, council established a transportation benefit district within the city of Sunnyside. On February 24th of this year, council directed that a proposition be submitted to the citizens of Sunnyside, which is coming up on August 4th, to authorize the council to impose up to a 0.2% sales tax and sales and use tax within the city limits for 10 years to fund transportation improvements. Council has also held a public hearing in July on, for adopting its current six-year transportation improvement plan, which identifies improvement projects that could be funded in part by the TBD. State law in this area generally bars a public official or employee from using public facilities to promote or oppose any ballot proposition. However, RCW 4217A 555 subparagraph 1 does also provide that the council as a whole may take action at an open public meeting to express a collective decision to support or oppose a ballot proposition, so long as any required notice of the meeting includes the title and number of the proposition, which we did tonight, and there's an opportunity during the meeting for the members of the legislative body or any members of the public who may wish to express an opposing view to have an approximately equal opportunity to do so. With that, I would turn the item back over to the mayor.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. And we'll start with our Deputy Mayor Strimler. Any questions or comments on this agenda item?
None.
Councilor Hicks?
I think it's a great way to go with the 2/10 sales tax versus the tabs, but no other questions.
Councilor Restucci?
Only one item, Mr. Mayor, and it's the term is ballot, B-A-L-L-O-T, not ballet, B-A-L-L-E-T. Other than that, I think it's a good move.
Thank you. Councilor Boersma?
No comments at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Farmer?
I would have some issues. I do not like council supporting any ballot, any measure that's up for election. I think if we support one, we need to support them all, or I just don't think it's the right thing to do. It's a good project, but I think we should not be supporting that.
Councilor Henry?
No questions.
Okay, and I know we talked about doing the card tab, and we all lean towards putting this to the voters, and obviously this is the route we're taking. And as a whole, as a council, we all decided this is the route, and I agree with Councilor Farmer. I'm not a big fan of taxes myself, but I see the benefits of having this tax in place, not only for our citizens, but our city and the visitors that are going to see the improvement on the streets and sidewalks and all the different projects that can be funded or used for match funding with this source of revenue. And as a few council members said, we're not just putting the tax on the residents who live in town through the card tab. Now, if we do this sales tax, and at that point, we are able to, anybody who visits or does business in the city of Sunnyside would have to contribute to that, and it would be much more beneficial. I did get a couple comments from citizens that they didn't feel like a tax was appropriate under the circumstances, but they did see also the benefits of having these funds available for matching larger grants and projects to be able to improve our city. So they were kind of divided. So we'll see where this takes us. But I'm in favor of supporting this ballot proposition 1.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I did not speak against the tax. I spoke against supporting a letter of support for the tax. That's what I spoke against.
Perfect. Thank you for the clarification.
If we're going to tax, I think the sales tax is by far the best way to go. But I think we should not support a ballot measure for anybody.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any additional questions or comments on this item?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I understand my colleagues' concerns, but at the same time, we're voting to approve this measure to send to the people. So, I mean, I could see if this was a county proposition or a state proposition or something of that nature where we didn't want to weigh in. Um, but sometimes I think the people want us to weigh in. And I know this debate has been going on. Well, I've been on council for 16 and a half years, and it's been going on for 16 and a half years. I still believe that as leaders in this community, that people look up to us and that sometimes they want to know which way we're going to vote on an issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments?
I have one comment, if I could, please.
Please do so, sir.
Being we're the ones that brought this forward, we almost have to be the ones supporting it. If we bring it forward to this point and then turn around and say we're not going to support it, it's kind of self-defeating is the way it appears to me. That's really the only comment that I have on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments? Give everybody a chance to add anything to it. Okay, hearing no additional questions or comments, what is the desire of council on this item?
I would like to move to approve. This is Councilor Henry.
I'll second. This is Jim Restucci.
Thank you. So motion by Councilmember Henry, second by Councilmember Restucci to approve resolution expressing support for ballot proposition 1 concerning sales and use tax levy for transportation improvement program. Is there any debate on this item? Okay, hearing no debate, the city clerk will now start the roll call vote.
Deputy Mayor Stremler,
Yes.
Councillor Hicks,
Yes.
Councillor Restucci,
Yes.
Councillor Broersma,
Yes.
Councillor Farmer,
No.
Councillor Henry,
Yes.
Mayor Guerrero.
Yes.
Okay, you have 6 yes votes and 1 no vote. Motion passes.
Thank you. Up next on our agenda, we have items from council members. First item is council request status report. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Move an item out of the way on my screen here. Thank you. In looking over this with the department heads in advance, there's not very many items to update on that council's beyond council's last update. There are no grants currently available for the disabled parking area. One conversation we're going to be looking at with HLA is whether or not there's any other funding source potentially available for it, but right now we don't have one identified. Tree replacement plan, we're working with the nurseries that have just begun reopening and are going over that. Hopefully be able to get something planted before the end of this year. Councilor Restucci provided a update on the litigation and status of regulation and the broad complexities surrounding small cell 5G regulations, and that's not appearing close to resolution anytime soon. We are working with HLA. Had an update at your last meeting. We're looking at a potential guardrail along Grandview, steep slope along there, but need to take a look at that when they're not running water through the irrigation canals. I'll be giving a general report on update on homeless encampment during the city manager's report. And I know Chief Anderson had provided an update in the monthly brief to council on his progress with the residential volunteer program. I don't think there's been any change, and we'll of course be giving you a new report, an updated report for July here in the first part of August. And as Public Works Director Fisher mentioned last meeting, our staff have been cleaning the planters downtown. The daylilies, I think it is, that have been blooming pretty vigorously over the last few weeks are definitely coming on strong. And I invite any of the department heads, if you have any further updates, to feel free to jump in. I guess not.
Okay, so we'll move on to, if the council does have some items they want to add to the request status, please let us know. We'll get them on there. Up next, we have other reports, announcements, and/or questions by council.
I have one.
Yes, go right ahead, sir.
This is Councilor Farmer. At our last meeting, we approved a very expensive repair to, I believe, the jail van. And if I understood correctly, that there was some wrong fluid put into the gas tank. And as I thought about this since the last meeting, do we not have any protocols on who is allowed to add additives to our vehicles? Is it willy-nilly, whoever wants to add something can, or is there some kind of a protocol that has to be followed before we start, before our employees start working on vans or doing things to vans other than our shop?
So I'll ask Chief Escalera and Shane, Director Fisher, to speak to this. They've been looking into the incident and how it may have occurred. There are a number of fuel service providers that we go to, and I don't think they've yet finalized that, but they can speak to kind of how the refueling is handled and managed. Take a moment.
This is Director Fisher. Generally, the refueling is done by the person who's driving the vehicle, and it doesn't matter what vehicle they're driving. If you get low on fuel, each vehicle has a card in it. Every employee has a PIN number, and so they don't necessarily have a card, they just have a PIN. So when they need to fuel up, they go and fuel up the vehicle. In this instance, what happened, it sounds like is, and I'm not sure who the employee was, I'm not sure if Chief Escalera knows either, but my understanding was the employee thought that was a diesel engine that required a additive called DEF, D-E-F. And evidently it wasn't, and it got put in the system, and obviously it fried the fuel system. That's how the refueling is done. If we have any additives we put in, we definitely want that done by the shop, not by employees. But in this case, I'm not really sure how that all happened. So I'm not sure if the chief can weigh in on that, but that's all the information I have.
And the information that I have on that is that we do suspect it was an employee at the PD, perhaps a corrections officer that felt that they required to have that in there, but we don't know who it is. We don't have a name, just an approximate time frame maybe, but that's the best we have as well.
You know, my thought here is, number one, we had somebody that was not trained to do that, and DEF does not go into the gas tank anyway, into the fuel tank anyway. So I think we need to have some kind of protocol, some kind of system that our employees know that if something has to be added other than gas, that we better have a trained professional do it.
No, we appreciate the suggestion, and I think that's something, as Director Fisher mentioned, is consistent with that, and we'll be looking at that in our training and refueling protocols.
Thank you.
Okay, council members, anyone else reports, announcements, or questions?
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Are you sure? I can wait, Ron.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay, I got a question. On the on this COVID, are there federal grants available to us? I believe FEMA's putting out grants. I don't know if they're like to the police department or the fire department, but are there FEMA grants available that we should be applying for or could be applying for?
Yes, and there's actually quite a host of federal and federal pass-through through the CARES Act. We have already applied, as Council is aware, for one, which is the one of the first ones out of their process which was for reimbursement of COVID-related operational expenses and infrastructure changes. That was the $512,000 grant opportunity. It's a reimbursement grant, so we're eligible to apply for and submit essentially receipts for up to $512,000 under that one. There are also grants. A lot of the Federal CARES Stimulus Act was directed at assisting businesses of all sizes with different programs to stay afloat, keep their workers employed as much as possible, or to support workers who were laid off. And some of those programs are ones that we're eligible as the city to apply for in order to then partner with community-based organizations and services to funnel those funds out to business community. An example of that that we've talked about is the work that the Yakima County Development Association is doing with small business assistance and microloans. Director Alba has been watching for these closely. We're actually in process with one with Department of Commerce right now that we're trying to get ready and queue up. And as we get the details and kind of the agreements for each of these put together, we have been and will continue bringing those to council further. We're also watching the current discussion in Washington, D.C. We are aware that Congress is debating a potential new round of stimulus. We don't know exactly the size or the specifics of it yet, but I've heard anywhere between $1 and $3 trillion nationwide. I know that there were some concerns that the first round of stimulus for cities in particular, a concern that the Association of Washington Cities had was the first round of stimulus did not allow cities to backstop lost revenue. And for many cities, revenue impacts have been severe. So there's been efforts, I think, on the part of some of the lobbying organizations for cities to ask Congress to revisit that in the next stimulus bill and provide for opportunities to not just help with the unforeseen expenses of addressing the pandemic, but also ease the burden of some of the lost revenues. So those are some examples of what we've been looking at, and we'll continue to watch for new ones as they come along.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question, if I could.
Go right ahead, Ron.
Okay, you said there was a $512,000 grant. Is that something we're applying for?
That's one council's already approved. This we did a
Okay.
couple months ago at the end of May. This was the one through the department, from the federal government through the Department of Commerce. Director Alba described it a little bit, and it was part of this budget amendment because this is one that we can seek reimbursement for COVID-related expenses. So if we have, if we've had to go out and we've had to install, for example, sneeze guards and protection. We've had to incur some overtime as a result of COVID-19. We've had to buy additional personal protective equipment. Those are expenses that we can submit under that grant for reimbursement. And so that's one we already have in place, yes.
Okay, but there's, it's my understanding, FEMA has grants available to public safety, whether it's police or fire, I'm not sure, but I understand that FEMA has grants available. Have we applied for any with FEMA?
Not yet, but we'll certainly look into that. I know we're kind of trying to keep a wide net scan for all the different federal agencies that are providing COVID funding.
can we have an update on these at the next meeting?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Stucci, you want to go next?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have one for Shane real quick. Shane, a citizen sent me a picture of an upside down pedestrian crossing sign. The individual tells me that this has been there for a month. Now, I looked at the picture and it looks like it's on Walmart's property. So I got a question. Is that private property? Do they have to fix that sign, or is that our responsibility?
It is private property and it's their responsibility.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I didn't want to answer this citizen wrong.
Okay, thank you. Was there another councilor that wanted to ask questions that had an announcement?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I just wanted to let council know that the LTAC committee met, and we had a couple of, I would say, fairly important items on the agenda. One of them was involving the contract language and language in the proposals that people would send in to LTAC asking for LTAC funding. Mr. Casey was able to be involved in that, and it's going to be going before the legal department and then come to council for review. But the essential part of it is that we are tightening up the language. There's some requirements for financial reporting and some other requirements that we're asking for in the proposal, and then updating some of the language on the contract. And then we also talked about the RFPs that are going out for funding for this year, keeping in mind that our revenues have been somewhat reduced over the course of this year as a result of our pandemic, but still requesting that they get these in. We're talking about a due date around August 26th. I think that's correct. And then LTAC committee will meet, we'll discuss that, and we'll move those items on to council at that time as well. And I think there was one other thing, and Jackie, you probably remember it better than I do. There was a question that somebody had that I was going to bring before council.
I can't remember at the moment. We created additional proposals for the signature events, and maybe that was one of the things that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I don't remember that off the top of my head, but there was a question I was going to ask, and I can't remember
And
what it was.
you're cutting in and out.
Pardon me?
You're cutting in and out. I'm not sure if you're turning or something.
I am. I'm looking at the paper I took notes on, and I'm not finding the note on the part that I was going to ask. So we will hold that for another time.
Okay, thank you for that report. Additional council members, reports, announcements, or questions? Okay, hearing no additional reports, announcements, or questions, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is going to be upcoming council meetings. Mr. City Manager.
All right. Coming up in August, we have a few items on workshop and regular meeting agendas. Coming back on August 3rd, we'll have a follow-up presentation from the city attorneys regarding parking and vehicle ordinance amendments. And I going to try to work with Mike Shuttleworth based on the earlier conversation tonight, and potentially slot in either, well, that'll probably, might like to get Planning Commission's input on this too, possibly the September 8th workshop for that discussion on potential impact fee structure. We might be able to be ready by then. If not, might slide into October, but appreciate council's guidance on that tonight and interest in that conversation, and we'll work on getting something, a framework for you to be able to have that conversation as soon as we can. August 10th, we currently have an item from Public Works related to a cleanup project at the Sunnyside Municipal Airport, grant from Department of Ecology. And at the request of the Planning Commission, Mr. Shuttleworth is going to be bringing forward an item for an ordinance amendment related to adjusting their meeting time. They're planning to keep it, I think, the same day of the week, but they are hoping to adjust the start time of it a little bit. And right now that's actually set in an ordinance for them. We have then quite a few items on the future planning agenda that we'll be slotting in as we head into the fall. Various ordinance updates and some potential agreements that we've been researching. Several of these we've talked with council about at a high level previously. But just I think the Councilor Broersma, for example, just talked about we're looking at some adjustments to the tourism services agreements language. That's a new one on here. And Mr. Shuttleworth is also working on our comprehensive plan process. And one of the first steps for that, after bringing it to the Planning Commission, is we have to essentially put in place a public participation plan for the comprehensive plan process, and so we're looking at that. So we'll have quite a bit of business. As tonight's agenda showed, there's a lot of good work being done and still to come for the year. With that, happy to answer any questions or entertain further suggestions for additions to future council agendas.
Council members, if you have any questions, please let us know. And also, if you need to add something to the agenda for discussion, please let city manager, myself, or Jackie know, and we'll try to get those on as soon as possible.
That follow-up from Deputy Mayor Stremler, would you like it as a discussion item in the workshop or just a report back during the department heads report?
Oh, the report on the grant applications. Let's follow up. I'd like to follow up with Director Alba in the office tomorrow and think about how best to present that. That might be something we could do at department head updates or add to the council request form.
Okay, thank you. Up next, we have items from city manager and department heads.
All right. My notes up here. I have about 3 items for tonight. I mentioned earlier that I wanted to give a little more of an update related to COVID-19, kind of take it at a little global level. As of this evening, in the 6 months or so since COVID-19 surfaced here in the United States, we've confirmed more than 4.4 million cases and more than 150,000 Americans have lost their lives to the disease. Based on information from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, this death rate is about 4 times the average annual number of deaths from influenza over the last decade in about half the time. Currently, as of this weekend, nearly 60,000 Americans were hospitalized with COVID-19, and hospitals are reporting that many of their COVID-19 patients are suffering permanent lung, heart, or neurological damage, meaning it will affect their quality of life and our healthcare system for many years to come. This is a new disease. Our understanding of how best to contain and control it has been changing over time, but there is some good news to share, which is that at least here locally, fortunately, the Mask Up to Open Up effort that Yakima communities launched together in June is having a positive effect. Yakima has cut the number of new daily cases by about 1/3 since mid-June, and we've reduced hospitalizations. This is a tremendous community achievement. But it's also not a quick fix. This isn't a 100-yard dash, it's a marathon. And it takes a few weeks between changes in behavior to see changes in cases, and still more time until we see changes in hospitalizations and deaths. Ideally, each new group of infected persons infects still fewer persons in turn. We urge, and health officials urge, please keep wearing a face mask, wash your hands frequently, curb gatherings with persons outside your household, and limit non-essential travel. If we ease up too soon, as we've seen in other states, the disease can come roaring back pretty quickly. This brings me to a point I wanted to share about some questions we've gotten about yard sales. Sunnyside has required residents to get a permit to hold a yard sale since the 1980s. Recently, we received some reports of unpermitted yard sales. Residents were concerned with seeing people handling and then putting back items without sanitizing them, with few masks being worn, or with little physical distancing. All of these kinds of actions can increase the risk of transmitting the virus. We checked in on this, and state officials have said that a yard sale is considered a gathering of people outside the household that is not currently allowed in Phase 1 or Phase 2. And we checked in with other cities, our neighbors in Grandview, Mabton, Zilla. We are not currently issuing permits, and we're seeking voluntary compliance, which is why I wanted to spend a few moments on this tonight. I did want to clarify, right now, the city of Sunnyside is not issuing permits for yard sales, and we would encourage residents to please not hold yard sales until health officials say it is safe to do so. I also wanted to share an update regarding the homeless individuals residing at the city parking lot on 7th. Police have increased their overnight patrols in the area and have met with the neighboring businesses and residents. To date, we've not been able to substantiate any criminal conduct. However, we have observed fewer nighttime visitors at the site, and we're continuing those overnight patrols. We've also continued our efforts to ensure litter is cleaned up, and we've contacted the Yakima County Homeless Network and Yakima County Veteran Services programs to engage their services for the residents in their vehicles. We're also aware of efforts from some local community members involving nearby businesses, faith leaders, and mechanics to try to offer help with mechanical or vehicle repairs. And as I mentioned, city attorneys are working on potential code amendments in alignment with current case law. I'm meeting with them again virtually tomorrow, and we're preparing to brief council on August 3rd. Next, I wanted to make sure, note that provide a litigation update. Last week, U.S. District Court denied the city's motion to dismiss the Attorney General's lawsuit against Sunnyside over our past conduct of the crime-free rental housing program. This was not entirely unexpected, given the very high bar to meet for dismissals. But now the case will proceed according to the timeline that the court specified earlier this year. Initial disclosures and discovery are already underway. The court allows a period for potential settlement discussions in early 2021. The submission of exhibits and pretrial briefs has been set for March and April of 2021, and the court has currently set a jury trial for May of 2021. So this will be a lengthy process with a lot of stops along the way before we get to a potential trial, if we get to trial. The Washington City's Insurance Authority, which is providing assigned counsel for the city in this matter, is also conferring with our city attorney on next steps, and they are working to prepare to brief counsel in executive session based on the litigation later in August. So you'll hear more from us once we can get that executive session scheduled for you. And then lastly, we are continuing our preparations for a 2021 budget kickoff workshop in August. We've had some conversations and been trying to figure out how to do it and how we're allowed to do it. Recently, the General Counsel for the Governor's Office clarified to cities and counties that at this time, only public agencies and bodies in Phase 3 counties are allowed to meet in person. Public agencies and bodies that are in Phase 1 or Phase 2 counties are not permitted to meet in person at this time. Accordingly, we're working to facilitate a successful online workshop. We'll work to provide you the materials several days in advance for review and to get questions to staff. Our plan, as in 2019, is to essentially set the stage with a financial overview of the past 10 years and our response to past state audit findings, review our current debt, provide updates on our current revenues and spending, as well as a review of our target ending fund balance, and potentially provide you with a preliminary maintenance level budget, a budget that would essentially mean that what would 21 look like if we simply kept current service levels and staffing levels and assumed a modest inflationary factor. City Clerk has been polling council members to find a date in August that will work for most of council. Currently, it's looking like the weekend of August 15th or kind of second best is weekend of August 8th are our best options, but we'll get those details worked out for you this week. And that's my update. And with that, I turn it over to the department heads. I'm not sure who would like to go first. I'll invite, I know Shane has been speaking a bit tonight. Do you want to take the first?
Sure. Yeah, I just got one update. It's on the Edison Avenue Railroad Crossing improvements. And that's located at Edison and Fifth. I'm sure everybody knows where it's at. So the railroad worked through the weekend, and if anybody was down there today, it looks great. It's ready for asphalt. So my staff was out this afternoon getting it prepped and ready to go. And the city will pave that tomorrow. So hopefully if all goes well with the paving, it will be back open by end of day tomorrow. And so that's all I have.
Director Alba, do you want to go next?
She actually signed off about 50 minutes ago.
For council's awareness, Director Alba was actually out ill today, so she signed in for tonight's meeting. So I appreciate her making that effort this evening. Chief Escalera.
No, I have nothing to report right this time. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chief Anderson?
Yeah, I'm here. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I wanted to remind the council members of the recent National Weather Service and Yakima County's Emergency Management issued us a heat advisory for Monday through Thursday. It's going to be the first time consistently this summer so far that we're going to be at triple digits. So with that, I think wanted to kind of remind the citizens that we're probably used to it normally, but in the first few days there could be some issues, and I'd like to remind them to remain diligent in drinking their water and remain hydrated, make themselves aware of signs and symptoms of some of our more serious heat-related illnesses, all of which are preventable. And with prompt treatment of these heat-related illnesses, with aggressive fluid replacement, cooling of body core temperatures, it's pretty critical that we do that so that we can prevent illness and death. With all this COVID stuff going on, we don't want to make our citizens any worse. But the two that come to mind that we really want to make aware is basically heat exhaustion, and that's our it's most common. It's not necessarily life-threatening. It can be. It can always progress to a more deadly heat stroke. And the symptoms to really look out for is simple muscle cramping, fatigue, headache, nausea, vomiting, and up to fainting. But the one that is a true medical emergency for us that we want to make aware is heat strokes, and that's where the body actually entirely loses its ability to cool itself down. Patients stop sweating, and body temperature can rise above 103 degrees. They go into cardiac or heart rhythm changes. They have throbbing headaches, nausea, confusion, unconscious, and it can proceed to death in a very short amount of time. The infants and children up to 4 years old and elderly are most at risk. Patients that are overweight with medical conditions, diabetics with heart disease as well, and those people that are maybe a lower socioeconomic status that may not have like air conditioning or fairly high risk. With heat waves such as the one that's recently issued in this advisory, sometimes even if you do have air conditioned home, it can overwhelm the air conditioning capability in the house. Will remain for days above 90 degrees. So what we really like citizens to know is that during these heat waves, to please frequently check on their friends and neighbors and family members that are at risk for these heat-related illnesses and deaths, and especially the elderly and the disabled patients that cannot, or the people that can't leave their homes. Please don't leave their children or animals alone in cars, and make sure that the kids are not able to basically lock themselves in, car trunks and in refrigerators and things sitting outside. Also, we always know that sunburn is a potential, but try to limit their sun exposure during these midday hours and drink plenty of water sports liquids, make sure you replace your mineral. And then the ones that, as I said before, the infants and children, we'll make sure that the infants and children stay in a cool place, loose clothing, don't bundle them up in the summertime, and make sure that their faces are covered and their heads are covered with umbrellas or hats. And then for pets, we'll ask the people to make sure that the pets get lots and lots of water. And then of anything else, make sure you just sit in the shade and stay in an air-conditioned building for your home. We're going to put out a public safety announcement, I believe, online. And so we'd like to direct citizens, if they have any questions, to go to the city's website and Facebook to look for that. Thank you.
And for council's information, actually, City Clerk Renteria posted a graphic that covers a lot of those important highlights from Chief Anderson that Yakima County Health Department and Yakima Fire Department helped put together. So that is posted on our website at this time. Clerk Renteria, is there any further updates that you have?
I was just looking through my notes from our LTAC meeting, and Councilor Boersma, the only other thing I could think of was maybe giving an update on Sunshine Days. Was that it?
You may be right there. So we're looking at different ideas for how to do Sunshine Days. As you all know, that it's highly unlikely that we're getting to get to our Sunshine Day celebration the way we would normally prefer to do that. And so we're looking at other opportunities, and a couple of ideas have been discussed. And so if you have feedback, you can feel free to either talk now or contact me later, I guess. But one of the options is we reverse our parade, whereas normally the parade drives by us as we're standing shoulder to shoulder in the street. One of the ideas is to find a place where we can set the floats, set the royalty, and have everybody placed, and we get to drive by them in our cars and keep our distance from them, and thereby protecting them and protecting each other. So one suggestion was in the high school parking lot. Another one was perhaps in the Walmart parking lot or some other large space that we could have them all in. Nothing has been 100% put out, but we'd certainly like some ideas as soon as possible, because Sunshine Days is coming right up in September. And one of the upsides is we get to pick our date in September because, well, the state fair isn't going to happen. So we can have our own weekend back, and so we may be doing that.
Thank you. I think that's the department reports for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Okay, up next we have, we have nothing further. So unless there's an objection, we will adjourn this meeting at 8:01. You have no objection? So ordered. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening, and stay safe and cool.
Good night, Mayor. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.